Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. There are several items I would like to share with you, the last of which is actually printed on the agenda regarding the TC Ayers pool, and I will introduce that at the appropriate time. But the first item is regarding our virtual budget meeting. So over the last 2 weeks, the public has been invited to a variety of city budget meetings. But on Monday, August the 28th at 6 p.m., we will conduct the last virtual budget meeting. The public is encouraged to ask questions and make comments using hashtag #CCBudget on social media. The entire meeting will be conducted via social media and on CCTV Channel 20 so citizens can participate from anywhere. Look for more information posted on our website, www.cctexas.com/balancer, BALANCER. Again, the public is encouraged to ask questions and make comments using hashtag #CCBudget on social media. The next item is a public demonstration of our stormwater protection system. The public is invited to a stormwater inlet basket demonstration this Thursday, August the 24th at 10 a.m. at the 1800 block of Baldwin Boulevard. The city has installed a basket inlet system in targeted areas to collect debris before it can go into our local bays. Citizens will see what is being used to capture trash as well as what type of litter accumulates in city stormwater inlets. Again, this demonstration is called the Stormwater Inlet Basket. It's going to be this Thursday, August the 24th at 10 a.m. at the 1800 block of Baldwin Boulevard. So we would like you to save the date. This is regarding the street operations planning to host a traffic management center open house. So Street Operations is hosting the Traffic Management Center public tour at 3:30 p.m. Wednesday, August the 30th at 2525 Hygeia Street. The newly constructed facility houses the city's Traffic Operations Center, which controls and maintains traffic signals and the signs and marking division. Again, this is going to be Wednesday, August the 30th, 3:30 p.m. at 2525 Hygeia Street. The last item, as mentioned, is posted on the agenda. As I mentioned under the city manager report, I mentioned last week that it would be posted regarding the TC Ayers pool update.
Excuse me, Ms. I'm going to recuse myself from this part of the discussion. I don't know whether Michael wants to come down and
So as the mayor is excusing himself, I would like to bring forward Jeff Edmonds to provide the update. Jeff is the Director of Engineering.
Good afternoon, Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services. The manager asked me to give a briefing on this project in response to some of the recent media coverage that I'm sure some of you have seen. I've got a handful of slides. I'm going to try and go through it really quickly. This slide shows a timeline for this project. The pool was first opened in 1971, and the last time it opened prior to this year was 2013. There was a lot of discussion regarding whether we would need to reopen that pool in late 2016, early 2017. That culminated in a formal dispute resolution meeting with TxDOT and the Federal Highway Administration. We were seeking relief from the requirement to open that pool. The result of that meeting was that city manager contacted engineering and said we had 2 months to get that pool open. We essentially conducted a procurement over the weekend. If you look at that timeline, there were 6 days from the time that we were given the requirement to when the contractor actually started working. We had an abbreviated procurement on that. We invited 7 contractors to bid. There were 5 contractors that attended a pre-bid meeting on the 24th of March. There were 3 pool specialty contractors, 2 general contractors. We actually received 2 bids. They actually teamed up. There were the pool contractors went as subcontractors. On the 28th, you may recall, the City Council awarded that contract to Barcom Construction. They started working the next day. And we were able to get that pool open by the Memorial Day weekend. These are some images of what the pool looked like prior to construction. Again, this had not been maintained in over 3 years, and every aspect of the pool was in an advanced state of disrepair. This slide lists the scope of work that we procured. There was a lot of work on the pool and the deck. All the mechanical equipment had to be changed out. We had to make it ADA compliant, and there were a lot of repairs to the facilities there, the restroom facilities, the guard shack. At the time, the original scope, we did not think that it would be cost effective to rehab those restrooms and make them usable, and we bid it with a portable restroom facility being provided, and we subsequently substituted that via change order for permanent repairs to the restrooms. This slide illustrates the payment history on this project. There were 2 payments that have been made. First payment was made on June 8th, second payment on June 29th. I'm showing this because I think someone would get the mistaken impression from the news report that we had actually overpaid the contractor. It was accurate that there were some items on that invoice that were actually not done, but there were other items that were done that were not reflected. They used the original scope of work. When they invoiced us, they were substantially complete. They merely showed all of those items completed. At no time was the contractor overpaid. We actually still owe the contractor money. We're still holding their retainage, and they'll be submitting a final invoice for that amount, $19,492. And that bottom right figure is the final amount that they will have been paid after we pay their final invoice. So my point on this is we actually still owe the contractor money. I think you would have gotten a mistaken impression on this that it was in the opposite direction. This gives you a summary of the change orders. The first one, as I mentioned, substituted the permanent restrooms for the temporary restrooms. Change order number 2, which was just executed, was a reconciliation of all items, add and deduct, to come up with a total reconciliation amount, which was a deduct from the contract value of just over $10,000. This is a summary of the total project budget. The one that has bid is the one that City Council saw when we awarded the contract. We were anticipating a total project cost of just over $700,000, and we've actually completed this for about $100,000 less than what we originally anticipated. These are some statistics from Parks and Recreation on the usage. They had almost 1,650 people that used the pool for an average daily use of about 36 patrons. I want to illustrate the source for the difference in the project as built and what we anticipated going into this. Of course, with the time frame that we had, where we had to conclude the procurement over the weekend without the benefit of drawings and detailed design, it created some challenges. So one of the challenges, we knew we had to get this facility ADA compliant, and as you can tell from the image, there's a pretty significant grade separation between the parking lot and the pool deck elevation. So we didn't know exactly how we were going to do it. We knew that it was going to take walks and ramps to get in there, and it was pretty much a performance specification that the contractor was going to have to satisfy. So that's why that item was priced pretty expensively, and the contractors proposal to us, but we actually didn't have drawings to base it off of. We just told him he was going to have to get a compliant entrance into the pool. During construction, we came up with a little more elegant solution that was much less expensive. We located the ADA parking space over behind the pool on Coke Street, and included a curb cut and ramp at that location. Used the back gate into the pool, and that resulted in savings to the project. These are some photos as the pool looks today. And just to recap, you know, we inherited a pool that was in a significant state of disrepair. We had just 2 months to get this thing open. We completed a competitive procurement over a weekend. This has 6 contractors, actually 7 contractors were invited. 5 showed up, attended a site walk. We got 2 bids. Project was completed on time, under budget, and has some significant use during the summer. So there might have been some things that could have been done better. Sometimes when you skip steps, that's what happens. But frankly, I wish all my projects were this successful. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Mr. Edmonds. Council, do you have any questions? That's right. I do have a machine right here telling me who has questions, huh? Councilwoman Vaughn.
I have several. I think this whole thing on the news, it's about perception, and it's about being transparent. And even one thing that you said a while ago is about perception and what the public believes. We said the usage was 1,600 people or so. The reason for that is because we had so many pools in the city of Corpus Christi closed. So normally you're not going to have that kind of usage. I've been over there I don't know how many times, and I might see 4 people. So I think that's in itself tells the public something that is not really so, because the truth is pools were closed in the city and they had to use that one. Can you tell me, when you first had this, was the sidewalk included in what was going to be done?
What we anticipate, let me go back to the slide that we did not have a design, but we had the criteria, the slope that you couldn't exceed. And we knew that you needed to get into this facility and not exceed that slope. So it was just a line item that said sidewalks to provide ADA access to the pool. That's how it was bid. And they put their price on that. Of course, the contractor had to have in his mind how they were going to do that. Without the benefit of drawings, it's very difficult to know exactly what they had in mind.
But we normally do drawings, right? Normally we do drawings.
Normally we do drawings. Normally we have more than 2 months. I mean, normally just getting from bid opening to council award takes me 2 months. We did this project from start to finish in that amount of time. So we didn't have enough time to be able to do this according to our normal process.
And I will just say this. I appreciate that Channel 6 News looked into it, because I went out there several times and I was expecting to see a sidewalk, because my understanding there was going to be a sidewalk. When I saw the invoice, that was partially paid. A whole bunch of money was paid on it, $382,000. Sidewalk was listed. So whenever normally if I pay a bill, it's itemized on what I'm paying. So I would think the city would do the same thing. My question to you is, when was the change order done saying that the sidewalk was no longer going to be in there?
That change order was, I actually put the final signature on that yesterday. It was been in negotiation back and forth with the contractor, I'd say, for a couple of weeks.
So it was done after the fact?
After
we pulled the sidewalk out, after we used the money for something else?
Yeah, well, that's correct. The contract was actually working out here up until the last day that the pool operated. What part of the change order included some assistance with daily operations on the pool.
So really the change order was done after Channel 6 investigated this. I'm not trying to be ugly, but to me, if I was sitting in the public and I was looking at this and I saw a $40,000 sidewalk and it wasn't in there, and all of a sudden we do an investigation, Channel 6 does that, and all of a sudden we do a change order after the fact, I would be questioning that, because to me what it looks like is there's a little bit of horse trading done because we didn't have enough money to do everything that we needed to do. I'm not trying to be ugly and mean. We need to be transparent to the public. We do.
Well, that's an accurate statement, and we typically do a reconciliation change order at the end of a project. I'm not sure if the answer is that we did the reconciliation change order after the Channel 6 story, or Channel 6 did their story before we finished the project. I would say it's the latter.
Well, I would kind of disagree. I remember when all of this started, and to me, it looks to the public like, gotcha. That's what it looks like. So
I certainly understand that. I would point out that we're still holding money from the contract. We haven't given them a final payment. We haven't closed out the job. So I think the story was a little bit premature.
Well, I think we all expected the pool was open. Everybody was there. So if you were going to do a sidewalk, I think the sidewalk would probably have been done before for ADA, before you open the pool. So this is just real suspect to me. I don't like the way it played out, because I think it makes us look like we're being deceitful and that we're not using our taxpayer money wisely. And we're talking about $40,000. We're not talking about $4,000. And then also he pointed out the rails weren't replaced. Were those rails replaced?
No, the rails weren't, and that was also associated with trying to use the front entrance here to get people from the parking lot into the pool in an accessible way. And what we wound up doing is bringing them in that side entrance there. So that was no longer necessary. So that was in part of the deduct from the reconciliation change
Okay,
order.
but you said that we needed to do the ADA for the sidewalk so they could get in. So there is no sidewalk.
That's correct. There's
New
no
sidewalk.
rail either.
No
It
new
wasn't
sidewalk.
necessary.
No nothing. It's not necessary?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm a little confused, because if we needed to do the sidewalk for ADA so they could get in, what did you do differently so that ADA handicap can get in?
If you look at the slide that's on your screen there, the one on the left shows we originally anticipated locating the handicap spaces in the parking lot, which is at a lower elevation. During construction, we moved them over to Coke Street, and we put this curb cut in, which was a much lesser scope of work, and we used the gate on the side. Of course, they replaced that gate. That was something else that was done, but that required much less level of effort than trying to bring them in the front, which, as you can see, there was a significant grade separation between the parking lot and the pool deck elevation.
And I understand y'all only had 2 months. Yes, go ahead.
Do you mind, Councilman Vaughn, Valerie Gray, Executive Director of Public Works? There was 2 things that really changed, like what you're saying about the sidewalk. It was the restrooms. Originally, because of the lack of time we had, we were going to put in the portable restrooms. But in the time period of after getting the bids and talking and doing a little bit more research, we were able to put permanent improvements to the restrooms and eliminate the portable restrooms. That change was the same thing with ADA. Originally, we thought we had to get the ADA accessibility to the parking lot, which was a longer distance, and that's why it was originally written that way. With a little bit more time and a little bit more study, we had found that if we were to provide the ADA access with a cut in the fence line to access it from the street, it would shorten the need for as much sidewalk that was going to take it all the way to the parking lot. So that was the reason for the change. It was not in per se, as you say, a change order right up front, but there was a change in lieu of the sidewalk and the handrails accessibility all the way to the parking lot. They now had the ADA accessibility right from the street through the fence into the pool area itself. I didn't know if you understood. There was a change in the job that probably should have been documented in another invoice. And again, as Jeff is saying, they paid off of that invoice that had all those original things on it. And there could have been some marks on it to show that there had been some changes, and it would have to be corrected on the final invoice.
We should have caught that on the invoice. We should have processed a change order before we processed that second invoice. If I had it do over again, that should have been.
And that's my issue. I realize that y'all only had 2 months, and I get that. It was kind of a rush thing, but even with that, it's public money.
Right.
And so the issue to me is you did not do the sidewalk. We did the change order after the news reported it because it looks to the public. They found it, so we took it out.
Right.
That is my issue.
Well,
And,
when it-
and we
when
just
it-
need to do a better job. And I'm not convinced this
Yes, we
is
do.
all up, and I'm just not,
Ms.
because
Vaughn?
of the way it played out.
Ms. Vaughn, I agree with you 100%, but on most of the projects, what happened is we got the pool to what is called substantial completion and able to turn it over to the department, the client department, in order to open the project. It's like any street project. It's not totally completed before it's opened up for the public to use. There's still the checklist that needs to be done. There's still some things that need to be done before you close it out finally with a final change order that sums up all the changes and gets it all down before you release the funds back. So in the case of the time, it was all, again, a very unique project and not the typical. And so, yes, there's probably a lot of things that could have been done a lot
But
different.
we can't use that for an excuse. We are
Yes.
constantly grilled up here by the city manager, by you
Yes.
guys. This is the process you have to follow.
Yes.
So if we have to follow it, you guys should have to follow
Yes.
it, especially for the perception of the public. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Council Lady Guajardo?
Thank you. Well, I agree 100% with Mrs. Vaughn, and I think you guys know what you're doing. And there isn't room for, we should have marked this or marked that. At the end of the day, we can go on and on about, what was written, how it was written. We're not in your line of business. We have to depend on you. So when you have something like this that comes out on television, and I hate to sit here, I didn't want to say anything negative about this, but there is nothing but negative about this. And we are the face. We're the people in the forefront. So I think it's needless to say imperative that in your positions, you can't make that mistake. That can't be something that's out on Channel 6. That being said, for the record, I want to clarify something, Mr. Edmonds, you just mentioned. Mrs. Rose, when was it that this all began with this pool? Was it 2 years ago, 3?
No, this actually started
negotiations.
in early 2016 as it relates to having to deal with this.
No,
Pool.
the negotiations though, the deal with TxDOT,
TxDOT, that was.
roughly.
That was probably in the July, August timeframe, because we ended up having to send them a letter dated August 16th of 2016 indicating that we was going to
Right, but
move
before
forward.
that, we didn't make that deal. Before that, this all began when we said we would redo this pool. We meaning the city, not necessarily these people sitting up here. That was in what year?
That was in 2016. And August 16th is when we made the commitment to TxDOT that we would reopen the pool.
Are you asking about the four-party agreement that was?
Yes, because I believe
Well,
that was,
technically, this pool is not part of the four-party agreement.
okay.
yeah.
My understanding was the pool, redoing the pool got set aside for some time. And it was done, it was done last minute. It was done right before, Memorial. I mean, that was the day that we had to open. It was Memorial Day.
Right, but August the 16th of 2016 is when I submitted a letter
Right.
to TxDOT indicating that by Memorial Day time frame, is that Memorial Day in May?
Yes.
That we would have the pool open. So it was August of 2016, we said that probably by May of 2017 that the pool will be open. That was the letter that was submitted
In August.
of last year.
And we started the work, I think we awarded the bid in March. So my
Right.
point is, I don't know what happened in between, and I believe we don't.
Oh, I know what
understand.
happened in
Okay.
between. After August, Parks and Recreation was the department that was more engaged. At least prior to August, Parks and Recreation was involved. So after August, Parks and Recreation was working on the project, and engineering didn't really get totally engaged until after we had the meeting with TxDOT. I believe that there was a meeting myself and staff had with TxDOT in the February timeframe, where TxDOT pretty much said, along with FHWA, that we needed to get that pool open because we were hesitating because the costs had gone up. So
Well-
Parks and Recreation was involved early on before
Right.
engineering got in it.
Right. Well, I guess I'm referring to when the prices were changing and there was discussion and
It
that
was-
set it aside.
It was between the August timeframe and probably early this year.
Okay. But this council did not make the negotiation with TxDOT regarding that pool. It came before us to get it done by a certain time frame. So my point was just that we inherited that. We had to deal with that. We had to take a vote on what do we do based on the agreement prior councils. I don't know if it was one or two, probably one, but we had to vote on what a different council negotiated and made a deal about. So I wanted the public to know. You made a statement that says, you said something about it, you guys maybe inherited it. We inherited it. That issue has been on this table for quite some time. I don't want the public, which I've heard, the perception that we made a bad decision, or we just went out and decided to redo this pool. This was not something, our hands were tied. This was something that was done before we got here. We had to execute it. So that was just.
What you said is exactly correct. When engineering was engaged on this project, the first thing we did is hire an engineer to do a detailed cost estimate. And that was significantly higher than what we were under the impression it was going to cost to get that pool open. And so that happened in January of this year. And that's when we tried to get relief from the requirement from TxDOT. And that date that we listed at that meeting, March 23rd, is I think when they had that final dispute resolution and would not grant us any relief.
Councilwoman Rubio.
Okay, couple of questions. How much did we pay for square foot on that roof? Do you have that?
I don't have that. I'll have to take a CCAR
Okay.
on that.
Can you tell me how much do we pay for the actual cost of the roof? Just the entire roof? Do you have that figure anywhere in there?
I don't have that with me
I don't
now.
have that information in front of us.
That is part of the work that was done.
Okay. I have someone who was out there watching the project being done, okay? And in fact, I myself drove by there the day after we took a vote because I wanted to see how quickly they were going to get out there to start doing the project. And there was nobody out there, okay? I drove the following day. There was one truck parked in the parking lot. They weren't doing anything. So I was surprised. I thought, okay, this was an urgent thing we had to do. And I was just surprised that they weren't moving on it. So the idea that we were paying so much money was startling to me. And I know that we had to do it. It was an agreement. It was a signed agreement by the city. And that was done by, I guess, the city manager. Is that correct, Mrs. Rose? That agreement, did it come to council, or was it something that the city manager agreed upon? How did that happen? Because I don't want to be blamed for something that the council didn't have any say-so over it.
At the time that the staff got engaged in this, the council at the time was made aware then. But when we communicated with TxDOT and FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, they referenced an agreement between TxDOT and FHWA, and I guess as part of that agreement, that pool was something that needed to occur.
Right.
Because the agreement that this council is a party to is the four-party agreement. The pool is not referenced there, so this was discussed at a much, much higher level tied to the whole Harbor Bridge project.
Right.
And once I became aware is when this council became aware.
Right. I just want to make that perfectly clear because there's a lot of different stories that are floating out there. And which council? Was it last year's council? Was it 2 years ago? Whenever it was. This has been going on because of the new Harbor Bridge that was coming into play.
That's right.
And the urgency that we were under to approve this particular pool, because they were sort of like, I guess, holding us hostage in another, I mean, I'm going to say it out there because that's how I felt, that if we didn't do it, we could possibly lose the Harbor Bridge. And so it was important that we get this done. And so for those folks that are out there, needed to understand that this was almost like if you don't agree on this, we might just not allow you the money to come for the new bridge. That was sort of like a bargaining chip, per se. Am I sort of correct, Mrs. Rose, or not?
Yes, in that that's one of the reasons why we had the dispute resolution meeting, because early on, once we ended up getting some better costs, it became a challenge. We really didn't think that we would be able to get it done. And the dispute resolution meeting was really set for them to say, you really need to get this done.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I immediately said to staff, we need to get this done.
Right.
So you're correct.
Okay, I just want to make that put out there so people understand that yes, it was very costly. But Mr. Edmonds, can you kind of help me understand this, and for our folks to understand it also? Did the amount, did we pay premium prices, I guess, because we were in a short time frame? Would that, did that sound kind of sort of in the right ballpark or not?
I
mean, 'cause they were
I think
extremely
that's
high.
a reasonable conclusion.
Okay.
You know, when you have to conduct a procurement in a rapid fashion like we did, and you don't have the benefit of drawings, a contractor perceives there's a certain amount of risk that's transferred to them.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they've
You could-
probably don't go into this with a very sharp pencil.
Okay,
think
I
that's
just want
an
to make sure
accurate
that,
statement.
that maybe that could have been another reason why they were so high, because when you see those prices, they were extremely high in a lot of people's eyes, and including myself. And then after that it was done, I guess my main concern was how quickly we had to turn around and kind of close the pool down because there were some issues. Is that correct?
We had a couple of issues. We had some issues with paint and paint getting on kids. Of course, these were young boys. I think that if there's some wet paint there, they can find it. And so we had to shut it down to address that. And then there was another issue that we had with the water quality, and that's part of the reason that we engaged the contractor to help out with ongoing daily maintenance out
Okay.
there.
And so once that happened, that was at their expense, not ours, I hope.
Well, no,
Please.
their ongoing, that water problem, I think was probably on us, and I think and our lack of familiarity with operating the new system. But we thought that it was better to test the contractor that installed it with helping us out with the daily operation on the pumps and filters. So those were the two little hiccups.
Okay. Okay, and I guess the way you were able to tell how many of our citizens used the pool was how they pay to go into the pool? Is that how you kept track?
I got those numbers from Parks and Recreation.
But they pay to go in and use the park, I mean the pool? Or is it
I think
is it
I was
free?
under the understanding they were offering that for free, but
For free?
I'm a little bit out of my lane with that.
But there is a log that we log folks as they use the pool.
Yes, ma'am, we got those numbers from Park and Rec, and I do believe they track the numbers that attend and who shows up. And during that time period, I think it was free
Okay.
attendance, so they were
Okay.
keeping track.
Okay. Well, I know this has been very controversial, and I know it was hard for us, Mrs. Rose, because I know that there was an assigned agreement that we said we were going to do something, and I've always been up here pushing, because when I was fighting for my fire station, when we passed our bond in 2008, I always was up here saying a promise made is a promise kept, and that's why it was important for me to honor that agreement that was signed by the city. And that's why I voted the way I did. It was because we did have a signed agreement. And I did not want to play that what-if game, that if we decided not to do it, then TxDOT could say, guess what, you're not getting your new bridge. Because the new bridge was very, very important for me and for this community, for it to happen. But I think in the future, whenever we decide to get into negotiation with whoever is out there, we need to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's and do it in a timely fashion so that we don't get slammed with a huge high amount that is one more time left up to the taxpayers. So I think it's a valuable lesson that we've had to learn. And I hope that this pool, no matter what happens with the new bridge, I hope that someone will continue to use that pool. I hate for it to, we use that kind of money and that it's not being used at all. Thank you.
May I just interject? I don't believe, at least during my tenure here, I don't believe that if there were conversations at a higher level about the pool, I'm not aware. All I was informed from TxDOT is the fact that this was something that was part of a conversation at the TxDOT FHWA level, and it made its way down to us. So there was no negotiating. By the time it came to us, it was, we need that pool open, and it was a couple of summers, they indicated. This is the second summer. So that's how it made its way to us. So if there was conversation, it was at another time long before me in terms of how TxDOT and FHWA came to their conclusions.
And way before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rubio. Mr. Garza.
I've been on the council 5 years. I don't remember ever taking a vote on the pool except for the one we took in March. So again, it never came to council, and we never took a vote on previous commitment or making a commitment to redo the pool. Having said that, though, just looking from the contracting standpoint, I mean, when we go out there and do a job and a contractor finds something, he finds a concrete wall instead of a sheetrock wall, and he's coming asking for more money because the scope of the work has changed and he's asking for additional monies. Don't we have any kind of a way or a trigger point on our side that if you see a lesser task or the job is going to be less work because the engineer found a way to accomplish like an ADA effort and eliminate a sidewalk, shouldn't there be some negotiation about how the city should share in those savings? I mean, that's the issue that I have, is that it seems to me like sometimes, you know, we may punish some contractors and make sure that they pay out of their, out of what they should be earning for something they find that wasn't found by engineering or by the engineering firm that did the scope of the work. And with other contractors, you know, we let them do what they want and we pay, we don't share any in the savings. And that's a concern I have, is that we don't seem to have any strength in negotiating the contracting portion of the work. I know 2 months, it seems like a real short period of time, but you didn't do the engineering. You hired an engineer, outside engineering firm to do the work. And so really, it's, from my standpoint, it's construction oversight that you were tasked with. Yep. And at this point, when you said on TV, hey, you know, we'll get our money back on the next job, that doesn't sound like the right answer to give to the public. I mean, that just, what she's talking about, transparency, I mean, that's not, all the things that you showed us, you explained everything away, but your first answer out of the box is that, hey, we're going to get it back on the next job. I mean, that's an unacceptable answer. You know, I mean, I'm just going off of what I saw.
No, I didn't say next job. I said we would do a reconciliation change order on this project, which we did, and it was a reduction. We got this work done below contract value.
We need to figure out how we're going to get more talent or more skill level at negotiating these contracts, and whether we're negotiating for a change in scope up, or if we're seeing an opportunity for reducing the cost because of an engineering firm, or because the contractor found another way to do something, we need to be able to negotiate that cost back down and be able to pass that savings to the taxpayer, not just say, hey, you know,
I agree with
maybe you'll cover my change orders next time. I mean, that's not acceptable practice in my book. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Ms. Lindsay Opal.
Ms. Rose, this really comes back to something at the very high level, which is, again, someone made a commitment, a contractual obligation for the city at some point, somewhere, somehow. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been at this point. And so I just want to just remind you and all throughout the organization, we need a master list of all these contractual organizations. I mean, there has to be obligations out there where we can go and say, what are they? And I think we've got them so far down in different departments. This was a park and recreation initiated type relationship, but then engineering, Jeff, you ended up with it again. I mean, sometimes the buck stops with you guys most of the time. I certainly hope that you guys were able to learn something from this process. I know it was expedited, and I would probably assure you without a doubt that there were added costs because a contractor who has to move from one job to another or pay overtime or whatever they need to do for them to make money, they're gonna have to pass that on to you in the bid process. Ultimately, I look at this is somewhere north of $600,000. I forgot what that number was. It was 700.
Yes.
I got the big numbers, not the little numbers.
Total project cost,
Yeah.
just north of 600.
Just north.
Correct.
And this item that we're discussing, I did not see the story, I don't think, but the item we're discussing is how much money?
I think it was about $39,000 is what they were questioning.
Well, I mean, I have to say it's very comforting to know that our media is helping us get down to the granular level of managing our contracts. So that seems like a pretty specific issue to be brought up to the city, and I agree 100% about the perception. But it's very interesting that in a project of this scope, which had this much energy behind it, positively and negative, we all have the same goal. We want to see that Harbor Bridge built, and we want to have good relationships with all those folks who are helping to build, correct me if I'm wrong, $1 billion bridge. But I do fully appreciate that. And the number of projects that you guys have under contract through engineering right now is what?
About 75.
About 75 all told. So there's a lot going on. There were many moving parts. This one definitely had high visibility. I certainly hope that every time, I certainly try to do the same in my business, when you find a struggle or a challenge or something that was brought to your attention, Ms. Rose, I know you guys have a quality improvement mentality. We got to improve that process because you guys don't have time to be going back and doing it again. So let's just make sure that we don't let it happen again.
I agree. We need to improve. We aim for perfection. We fall a little bit short sometimes. This is one of those.
There's only one or two of them out there that can do that, but we really appreciate your attention to this detail and really encourage you to continue to look for ways that get ahead of this curve because, and if it's out there, again, Ms. Rose, I think if we get this information ahead of time, if we know that it's a challenge and, you know, there may be an oops that happens, we need the oops ahead of time so that we're able to work with it up front as well. So thank you.
Duly noted, Ms. Opal. I would like to just add that we did make a change of personnel within that area, even in the department, as well as in construction inspection. It's just getting the staff up to speed as to pay attention to those things. In the case of this, it was the elimination of one item and the adding in of something back. The lack is the change order in advance showing it so that none of this would be questioned. I think when Jeff kept saying that we're still owing the contractor, it's just making sure that the documentation is in place every step of the way. With this being an unprecedented job and being so fast and so many projects going on, not to make excuses, you're absolutely right. We do need to do a better job and to work as best as we can to take care of these things. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay Opal. Councilwoman Vaughn.
Who inspected the pool after it was completed?
That was inspectors from our construction division.
So we're completely, fully up to code on the inspections for the pool?
My understanding is we're compliant. I know there were some issues during construction. My understanding is we got through those.
Okay, because we wouldn't have opened it unless we were completely, fully up to code.
Correct.
Okay. I think the lesson we learned from this is that we're transparent. And I know y'all been hearing this, but I don't care if it's $10, the public has a right to ask where the money was spent. So I don't want to make light of the fact that it was $40,000 out of $650,000. That is a lot of money. So we should be concerned about that and not make light of it or make excuses. And I appreciate you saying that it could have been done better. But I just think we have got to be accountable. We're being watched. The public's watching. The news is watching, rightly so. It's public information. So we shouldn't dog them for doing it. They're doing their job. And I'm glad somebody's out there looking for the taxpayer money. Looking out for the taxpayer money as all of us up here are trying to do as well. Thank you.
And if I could just interject that the staff strive every day to be transparent. We don't have anything to hide. And it's fine that people are watching us. But we have nothing to hide, and that's why when any of these issues come forward, we're willing to stand and talk about them, because that's all part of being in the public business.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Ms. Huerta and Ms. Rose, do I need to ask for public comment on this item? Okay.
No.
It's just a report, the city manager's report.
Well, I would like to also add one little quick thing. I remember the estimated number being 750, so thank you very much for keeping it 135 under. However, I do have to agree with all of our other council members here, but hey, I'm not very good on a microphone, so just keep plugging along and let's keep going forward. But thank you all very much.